Star Wars Rebels is often lost in the Clone Wars shadows, but I'm drawn to the overlooked. While everyone told me I had to watch the Clone Wars and that I was going to love it, Rebels was my own discovery. In fact, a few of my friends told me I could skip it. The promotional art, however, drew me in. The character design stood out to me and got me excited to see who these people were. Then I watched the show and saw why I'd been warned. Everything that irritated me about the Clone Wars was emphasized in Rebels. The Clone Wars had an arrogant teenage prodigy who could outclass the best in the galaxy, who never suffered any lasting consequences, and who never earned the respect given her. As for Rebels,
now there are two of them.
As far as I can tell, most people seem equally irritated by Ezra, so I won't spend too much time on him. It's just very obviously a kid's story when a teenager can regularly make a mockery of the bad guys. This is Ezra prior to any training, and we can already see that the Imperials aren't a threat to him. So, off to a great start with stakes being about as low as possible. By the end of the series, he's able to hold off an entire Imperial fleet, so we're going ridiculously OP pretty fast. If a teenager with next to no training, even if he's a prodigy, can be this powerful, how did the Jedi Order die again? And how did the Separatists ever hold them off? Anyway, Sabine Wren was the character I was sure was going to be my favorite. Her character design looked really clever and original. A graffiti Mandalorian? You have my attention. And then we get this. Look at this scene. Does Sabine even realize she's being shot at? You could remove the stormtroopers from this scene and it would change nothing. That's how little the bad guys impact the story. Even major villains, such as Gar Saxon, are defeated not by any clever trick or anything, but just by Sabine being inherently better than them. Yep, another teenager being a better fighter than a tried and true war veteran. You see it all the time. In fiction, anyway. It's pretty rare in real life. At one point, they nearly give Sabine a good story arc when the weapon she created was turned on her family. Yet, in true Filoni fashion, no named character was harmed in the making of this scene. This immediately undercutting the severity and removing any lasting consequences. Sabine was able to have her little sad moment, her little angry moment, and then carried on like nothing changed because nothing had. This show also really made me question the existence of Inquisitors. Someone with only a few months of training was able to keep pace with one of them. I know they were purposefully weak so that they wouldn't rival Vader, but are they even useful at this point? I know we're told they've hunted down Jedi, but from what we've seen in the show, they wouldn't know what to do if they ever caught one. It doesn't make the heroes look powerful, it just makes the villains look pathetic. And with pathetic villains, how am I supposed to applaud the heroes? Even Maul, one of the most powerful beings alive, is tossed aside like a sack of potatoes by a Padawan. And I'm not talking about a Padawan like Obi-Wan Kenobi, a future member of the High Council and one of the most powerful masters of his day. I mean Kanan Jarrus. A fine character, but not one known for being especially powerful. The Clone Wars made war a joke, but Rebels trivialized it to a whole new level. I never felt any sense of suspense or danger until the very end of the show. Now, not all the characters were as disappointing as Ezra or Sabine. Zeb and Kanan were actually decent. Zeb has lasting character growth with his rivalry with Agent Kallus. Their shared history with his people and their eventual friendship is a fun arc. But after this, their stories are over and they're just kind of there. No further arcs, no further character growth. They become glorified extras. Now, the writers did have one last use for Callus. Being outwitted and outfought by Thrawn is a good way to usher in the new villain. This shows that Thrawn is more dangerous than Callus was, thus will be a more threatening villain. It also allows Callus a new dynamic, as he must exist outside of the Empire, something we haven't seen from him before. I do think if Thrawn had killed Callus, it would have been more impactful, but this isn't necessary. Yet Zeb doesn't have this same usefulness. He just sticks around, contributing nothing to the story. He could be written out without any changes to the story at all. I'm sure he was kept around for merchandising reasons, but that's not a compelling narrative. Give him another arc or kill him off, but to have him simply be a goon for the good guys, a bit of extra muscle, is a forgettable and uninspired end to this character. Now, Kanan has multiple arcs, and I don't think there's anything blatantly wrong with how he was written. Personally, though, I just found him to be a rather bland underdog archetype without too much unique to grasp onto. A fine character, but nothing astounding. By this point, what I'm saying and the title of this video aren't really lining up. But there's another member of Ghost Crew to talk about, and I don't mean Chopper. I've said before that Hera Syndulla is my favorite Dave Filoni character, but for most of Rebels, I found her more along the lines of Kanan. Nothing particularly wrong with her character, but nothing particularly memorable either. Kanan and Hera mirroring Jax Pavin and Larenth Parak is also a little disappointing and ensures they're not winning any originality contests. And Hera's role as the motherly voice of reason, though refreshing in Filoni, wasn't enough to make her a truly memorable character. Due to her role as pilot, she probably had the least screen time of the main cast. She was also the most put together and confident member of the crew. Not that that's a bad thing at all, but she knew who she was and what she wanted prior to Season 1, so we didn't get to discover that along with her. Combining that with her nondescript behavior and generic personality, and she also lacks anything but confidence to latch onto. She wasn't given room to shine either. She learned to fly the B-Wing, she outflew Volt Scaris, and she escaped Darth Vader. All impressive, but that's only 3 moments out of 75 episodes. But then came Season 4. There were just a couple episodes, really. While the rest of the season continued in the same no-stakes writing, one arc was, in my opinion, better than anything Filoni wrote before or since. I am, of course, speaking of the occupation of Lothal and the attempted breach of the blockade. Here, we begin excellently by pitting Hera's 2 defining personality traits against each other. Her role as mother, and her role as the voice of reason. Hearing the situation on Lothal, Ezra is understandably distraught. Hera, as a freedom fighter, is also angered by the tightening grip of the Empire, but it's seeing Ezra's despair, it's empathizing with his panic that really reaches her heart. Reason tells her it's a suicide mission, but compassion and pity for someone she cares for makes her reconsider and even go against her better judgment. This is excellent character development for a couple reasons. We now see her priorities. We knew she was caring. We knew she was practical. But what about when those things are mutually exclusive? What about when being practical betrays someone she loves? Neither the story nor any other characters present a solution to excuse her or allow her to remain both caring and practical. No, she must make the decision herself, and, right or wrong, she makes it and accepts the consequences. Then we get to see Hera try to reconcile what she did. Compassion won out, but that doesn't mean rationality was thrown out the window. She has to overcome impossible odds, so she gets to work. She's even cheerful and encouraging towards Ezra. Confident and reassuring. That's what Hera has always been, and that's how she remains despite the impossible situation. Is she putting a brave face on it, or did she actually convince herself she could break through the blockade? They've overcome impossible odds throughout the show. Like I said, there have been no stakes. Hera could be rationalizing away her fears, believing in her own confidence, luck, or whatever else got them so far. Then we see Hera's plan seem to work. Filoni plot armor seems as thick as ever as Commander Scarris's hubris defeats him and gives Hera the opening she needed. But then, contrasting with the past 3 seasons, the villain adjusts his plan and Hera and her fleet literally crash and burn. At this point, only nameless characters die, so we haven't quite distinguished ourselves from all previous defeats in Rebels. The situation looks grim, but Filoni has brushed bigger messes under the rug before. Perhaps Hera will have an Ahsoka-styled adventure, single-handedly sabotaging the TIE factory. But no, she's captured. Well, she'll escape though, right? No, she has to be rescued. Well then, the ragtag group of teenagers will break into the heavily guarded Imperial facility and rescue her without a hitch. Well, you know how that went. With Kanan's death, the consequences of Hera's decision and the threat of Thrawn are solidified. There is a direct cause and effect, and none of the characters can escape that fact or offer any excuses. Hera and the rest of the cast have to mourn Kanan's death, and even after they recover, his absence is still felt in the show and in the characters, especially in Hera. And that recovery isn't easy either. The most confident character has that confidence stripped from her. She lost the love of her life due to a lapse in her judgment. This motherly, reassuring character withdraws, unable to offer that same support to others as she can't reassure herself. She's hesitant to act. She's questioning everything. She was the one who pushed Kanan towards the rebellion in the first place. She was the idealistic one, encouraging the others towards the cause. She was the one who planned and led the mission to Lothal. She was the one he sacrificed himself to save. But there's still a mission. Her mission. This cause got the love of her life killed, but she does not abandon it. That shows Hera is a true believer in freedom. Even when she loses everything, she still clings to her ideals. It'd be perfectly reasonable to become more passive like Kanan originally wanted, to just cause a bit of trouble here and there and then duck away before things got bad. She'd be justified in thinking she'd given enough to the cause, that she could run away and settle down with her child somewhere safe. No one could blame her for losing hope either. But no, she's committed. She believes in fighting for freedom when it's easy and when it's hard. But there's more to it than that. She could have become more like Saw Gerrera, focusing more on aggression than liberation. She could have continued the fight for the sake of revenge. But she doesn't. She fights for the same ideals after she loses everything as she does before. A lot of the time when looking at character growth and story arcs, people note how characters change. But equally important is how characters stay the same. Hera began and ended the series as the confident, reassuring motherly figure who was committed wholeheartedly to her ideals. But now, because of the show, we know that nothing can bring those ideals or that character down. Hera is who she is, tested and true. My only problem is that Kanan's death happens so close to the end of the show that we're not allowed much time to see Hera battle grief. We see her initial grief, true, but anyone who's lost anyone can tell you grief is a lot more than the first couple days. But what we do see when we last see her is her same confident, compassionate, and committed smile that we've grown to admire. So there you have it, my take on Hera Syndulla. What are your thoughts? She's my favorite Dave Filoni character. Who's yours? Let me know in the comments below. But for now, that's all from me. Thanks for watching.